So, Nikki, I have a company that's growing quite quickly, and now I have the need for a finance department. What kind of roles do I need to plan for or think about when I'm structuring my finance department?
Oh, yes, this is something that you do want to think about carefully. I always think that do always plan to what you want in the future because, what is your business going to look like in, say, 2 years' time? Because when you hire people, as you know, it takes a bit of time to get people trained and up to date in the business and to make a good impact. Now, there's quite a lot of different roles that you can have within a finance department. So it's a priority to work out what do you actually need now. Because of course there are some people that can do multiple roles, but as you get bigger, you want to split them out more. So think about what do you want to have done in your business and what can be done externally. So what I would first of all look at, um, I would go both ways, go top down and bottom up. So from a top down, think of for the decision making part of your finance department, do you already have someone in your business that's already quite attuned to finance and already can decipher what the finances mean and make decisions? If you don't, you urgently need a finance director, because you need to have someone in your team that actually does understand what it all means. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have, £100,000 a year full-time FD. It may be that you can get a part-time one, or it might be that actually you might say, well, actually the sorts of decisions we're making at the moment are lower level, and you might be able to take it down a role. So, but the finance director is the top role usually in a finance department. In some companies, often they're bringing in the Americanism of a chief financial officer. So you will have some businesses that might have both, because they might have segregated the duties between the two. But essentially, they're the ones that are the top level, making the decisions, knowing what the numbers mean, being able to plan the numbers with the board, and also hopefully helping with getting relevant investment or borrowings into the business. So that's the top level. Then if you look from the down up as well, look at what are the most basic requirements that you have in your business. So, who gathers the invoices together, make sure that you don't miss anything, makes payments from the bank account. Now, some of that might sound really basic, but actually it's integral, because if you get the basics wrong, your numbers will be all over the place and just not accurate. So some of that you can potentially automate. So if you start to get more and more of your clients emailing in your invoices, you can potentially get them into some sort of automation system. So, but look at the bottom of where you can, and look what you want to do with the lower level finance functions is to automate as much as possible, to have them clear processes so that the basics don't get missed. And then you can have them also, by having it very clear, you can make sure that you've got a lower, so somebody with less experience, or that is able to do those roles, so it's a bit cheaper for you as well, because you don't want to have your finance director having to punch in the invoices onto your system for you. It's very rare that would happen. You want to make sure that you've got the right person for the right role. Now, in between, there's lots of different roles. I'm just going to go through a few of them. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it's just to make you understand a little bit about what the potential differences are, because it can almost seem like a different language. So we've already talked about the financial director, chief financial officer at the top. Then often there's a role called a financial controller. Now, that financial controller is more about making sure that all of the ledgers and information all comes together, and all the different systems, because you might have other systems within your business that feed into the finance function. So that if you're in a larger business, you'd have your FD doing your, making sure your investors are happy, getting new investment, etc. But you'd have then your financial controller making sure that the day-to-day processes are all organized for the business, making sure that, you know, that your sales ledger department, so you're sending out your invoices, they would control all of the different functions and make sure that it's all brought together and accurate. So it is still, a financial controller is a very senior position, but helps more on the day-to-day side on the finances. Then within the financial controller would have various different potential departments going into them, and it usually would be split by, say, the sales ledger. Now, this is confusing because you often have in different companies the same department called different things. So some places it might be called the accounts department, as in just for the sales ledger, which is so it's your invoices that you send out. It might be the accounts receivable department. It might be called the billing department. If you're raising invoices to your own customers, it's all the same thing. It's just whatever you're calling it. Now, in that department, you'd have lots of sales ledger clerks, or, you know, accounts receivable assistants. Again, essentially, they are the same thing. What they're doing is making sure that the sales ledgers have got onto the system and that you're recording your sales accurately. In the accounts receivable, you could also potentially have your credit control department as well, which is obviously extremely key for the cash flow. Now, some accounts receivables department just does that as part of the thing. The bigger that you get, the more likely you'll have a dedicated credit control department. So you'd have one department raising all the invoices, making sure they're all raised and it's accurate. Then another department that is actually chasing them in and making sure that everybody gets paid. Then you've, as I said, going into the opposite way. So the invoices that you get sent for your suppliers is your accounts payable. Now, again, that could be called something else. It could be called your, you know, some people would just call it procurement. It could be purchase ledger, you know, various different names for the same thing. Basically, if you've bought a service or a good, a product for your company, they're the department that look after all those transactions. And then as bigger that you get, you may also then have balance sheet accountants that actually look at all of the different ledger accounts that you've got. You know, as you get bigger, you will have hundreds and hundreds of different job titles. But for an SME, ME, a medium-sized business, critically, you'll have the finance director, financial controller. You will have the sales ledger, accounts payable ledger type people. Then also, essentially, hopefully, you've also got a management accountants in there as well. Management accountants, they analyze what the numbers mean. So again, they might actually be called finance analysts in some companies, but they will look at what have you actually spent versus your budget. They also will help with producing the budget going forward. So that's really what a management accountant should do. There's a lot of analysis, but also hopefully forecasting and budgeting and things as well to actually make sense of those numbers. So not forgetting, of course, payroll. Some people will have payroll as part of their HR department, but in other places, payroll may form part of the finance department. But those are one of the functions that can float between different areas depending on how you structured your business. But obviously, payroll pretty key too. A bit of a whirlwind tour, and as I said, it's not exhaustive because there are lots and lots of different levels you can be, because you will have departments, some places that will be thousands of people, but for SME, those are sort of the key areas that you would have.